So on to you, Dr. Jagdish.
Hi. Thank you, Dr. Chitra and ARC for having me this evening. And Himanshu, I may not agree on all, but I do agree on a few aspects. I'm sorry about that. But I would like to take you through how we measure this and how they're clinically important. And we're not saying what I feel, but it's more what literature says. So our goal is like we would want a very well-centered IOL, and not only on in the bag, but having it on the visual axis as well. So this is all because we want to see a patient with 20/20. All these are 20/20s, but which 20/20 we are talking about? So which is that one which we want give our patients? So all maybe 20/20 on our papers, but patient may not be happy. This is because there are other aspects that can affect the quality of vision. I like one statement passed by Dr. Rajan. He said that if your cornea is not sick, you can go and implant any type of IOL. So I agree to a certain extent on that because you need to look at cornea very clearly. Among all the aberrations, which are distortions in the optical system, I think for cataract surgeons, I think spherical aberration is one of the aberration that has been well studied. So the importance of it is in selecting an aspheric IOL or presbyopia correcting IOLs. Let's look at a few basics. So the spherical aberrations of the healthy cornea is approximately 0.27 microns. And if you look at the total ocular aberrations, it would be about 0.1 microns. Lower aberrations provide better contrast sensitivity, and it is very important to understand that corneal spherical aberration would not change with age over a period of time, and it's the lens that changes. So if you look at this graph, it shows the corneal aberrations, corneal spherical aberrations stays constant, whereas lenticular aberrations keep increasing with age. And hence, in order to neutralize that, you need to look at a different type of lens. And this is a schematic diagram. On the left, you see a 19-year-old where the spherical aberration of the cornea of 0.27 microns is being neutralized by the lens. But whereas on the right, you see a schematic diagram where the lenticular aberrations has changed with age, and hence it's not neutralizing and it's adding up to the spherical aberration and thus affecting the quality of vision. Let's look at what happens post-refractive surgery. If you look at after myopic LASIK, the spherical aberration increases because of the central flattening, and hence aspheric IOLs with some amount of negative asphericity would help in improving the quality of vision. Whereas in hyperopic LASIK, the spherical aberration decreases. Here, I think spherical IOLs would be a better choice here. Let's look at this example. This is a patient who had undergone a LASIK procedure, and you look at his higher aberrations, not very bad, but you look at the spherical aberrations on the higher side. These would definitely benefit with an aspheric IOL where you would want to correct some amount of corneal aberrations. This is another patient who has very high amount of higher order aberrations, and spherical aberration also shows on the higher side. And this is because you do see some amount of decentered ablation here. So these are the patients who may benefit with aspheric IOL as well. As Himanshu did mention, that you do have some benefit of spherical aberration. You don't need to correct all because there's an inverse relationship between depth of field and the image quality. So do we need to correct all these? So small amount of residual negative spherical aberration may aid in achieving better unaided near vision, and patients can be less dependent on glasses on all the times. But positive spherical aberrations degrade the image quality and reduces patients' vision, especially in very myopic peoples. And hence it's very important for us to measure these and then look at if you can help them with choosing the right IOL. So if you look at an example like this is at age 20, you see a cornea of 0.27 microns, and then a lens has a particular amount of spherical aberration. And if you look at the overall spherical aberration, it is about 0.094. This is what you would like to look at. At age 70, the dynamics changes because the lenticular aberration keeps changing. And you do have lenses of different spherical asphericity. So wherein Technis has about 0.27, so wherein you can correct most of the spherical aberration in the cornea, and IQ has some amount of asphericity, it can correct spherical aberration to a certain extent. Whereas if you implant a spherical IOL in those who have higher amount of spherical aberration in the cornea, they do have residual spherical aberration, and that can affect the contrast sensitivity. So I think to answer to Dr. Himanshu's talk, I would say like there are about 34 papers that have been talked looking at spherical and aspheric IOLs, and it's clear that the ocular spherical aberrations have decreased, and fewer ocular higher order aberrations are seen with aspheric lenses with better contrast sensitivity. And this is the table showing the same. I'll not discuss this. I'll move on now. So in multifocal lenses or trifocal lenses, I would say these lenses do decrease the contrast sensitivity to a certain extent. And if you have a patient with corneal higher order aberrations, this would decrease the contrast sensitivity as well. So it's very important for us to select an IOL in these also, which would suit a particular patient. So angle alpha, Dr. Himanshu did talk. I'll skip all these and go on. So why we choose angle alpha? Because compared to pre-operative values, there has been a significant change in the post-operative values of angle kappa. So this is because of change in the pupil center in individuals after cataract surgery, and the change in the visual axis, which may affect its value. But this is not the same with angle alpha. This has been very well centered along the horizontal axis, and it is said to be more stable, and hence we started looking at angle alpha. It's more reliable and a stable factor. If you look at the distribution, it is alpha angle is temporal 95% of the individuals, and mean and median is about 0.44, and the percentile ranges from 3.34 to 0.5. And then if you look at having your cutoff as 0.3, you'll be excluding about 82% of individuals from having a multifocal lens. And if you choose 0.5 mm, you'll be excluding about 32% of them. And it also varies with with axial length. I think it's a very important factor that we all should understand. It has inverse correlation, and hyperopics have higher angle alpha, and especially hyperopes with steeper keratometry and lesser wide to wide do have very high angle alpha. And I would say, like, when you look at the outcomes of this, like you say that angle alpha is less affected compared to angle kappa in these individuals. So I think the amount of effect in the quality of vision is less if you have angle alpha 0.5 mm or less. So this is, I'll skip these examples, I would say, like, and then I'll summarize. So angle alpha is relatively stable, and aberration correction multifocal designs may be more susceptible to large angle alpha compared to with aberration neutral designs. So angle alpha could be used as a predictor with multifocal IOL design, and not with all, you cannot generalize it on all IOLs. I think IOL design should be considered as well. So the quest for supervision is more complicated with more important optical and neural factors. So I think we do have a small amount of it in our hands. There are more to it. And then I think the future would be more promising for us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jagdish and Dr. Himanshu, for beautifully discussing your points and very well covered. One question to you, Dr. Jagdish, if the angle alpha is a little more, would you, nowadays that we have a central optic zone is larger, would you feel confident to use these multifocal IOLs when that is alone in question, unless the angle alpha is hugely high? Would you do that?
Yeah, I do implant. I would say, like, I've not seen any angle alpha more than 0.6, I would say, like, but I did implant patients with multifocal IOLs or trifocal IOLs. So I didn't find any, though I didn't measure any of the quality of vision parameters, but patients do not complain of these.
And Himanshu, if you had a patient, I'm sure there might be any number of patients in Bangalore who have achieved target emmetropia, who do not have much of a higher order aberration, have normal angle alpha, but post multifocal IOL are quite unhappy. So how do you deal with these patients? Leave alone the psychiatric part of it, the genuine issue which could be missed in these eyes.
Could be. So one most important thing which I believe is when we can't find a reason, that means it's our shortcoming and we are at fault rather than the blaming it on psychiatric disorder, which may be there. Sometimes it can be there. But when things are not found, we take a solace in claiming that patient is fudging the symptom. I think we have to dig deeper to find out there can be some reason there. Having said that, there are so many reasons which can lead to glare issue and related to the dysphotopsic symptoms. So I don't think I would just leave it behind the angles and these things. I'd go for each and everything wherever possible if I can. Sometime mere finding out the reason itself solves the issue for the patient, because all they want is to get idea about why this is happening. And if we are able to convince them about how they can get over it and neuroadaptation part, I'm sure most of the time they get over it. Having said that, we all do come across rarely scenarios where we have explanted the lens, and that's true for everything. I mean, in life, that's going to be that small uncertainty. Looking at that, we don't stop living our life.
Dr. Jeevan Tyal, would you have removed the multifocal lens because of the negative dysphotopsia it created, or you never had patients getting so distressed?
No, I did have patients who were totally distressed. And I had explanted one lens of multifocal till date. And that was a patient where we assessed everything. Like we did X-ray, we did everything, and everything was normal. And despite that, patients are not very happy. So that also indicates sometimes that these parameters may not be the cause for a dissatisfaction. As Himanshu rightly pointed out, there are so many things. So this patient mainly, I think, would have had a negative dysphotopsic symptoms, where I had to explant and put a monofocal lens for this patient. But looking to angle alpha, normally we don't check for all patients. We are looking for those patients where they are not happy with the 2020, which Himanshu talked about at the beginning slide. So those patients who are not having satisfactory outcome after 2020 also, there we look into these aspects, then we see, okay, what was the angle alpha, what are the higher order aberration in these cases. But even a simple monofocal lens with aspheric design will have a lot of problems with the large angle alpha there also. It's not only multifocal lenses, it's the aspheric lenses also get affected by the decentration. So that is called a physiological decentration. There'll be a atrogenic or iatrogenic decentration also. But physiological decentration can also affect the quality of vision. They would have a 20/20 vision as such.
One thing I just want to point out.
Himanshu and Anaga have to say something. After that, we'll go on. For a change, it's going to be Dr. Shail and Gaurav, because Gaurav has a flight to catch here. So you get prepared for next. Yes, Himanshu.
One small thing, but the major fallacy or the paradox in ophthalmology, subjective sense, we are objectively measuring and telling patient you can see very well. It's like going to a restaurant and chef dishes out something and tells you this is so tasty to you. I mean, of course, there would be difference where they would have different perception. Finally, it's a subjective sense which we are dealing with.
Yes, Anagha?
Yeah, just one small thing, ma'am, for the audience, like sir was saying, there's a lot of confusion between angle kappa and alpha. A simple mnemonic like OVA, OVA, means angle alpha is the distance between the optical center and visual axis, so OVA, OVA, and PVK is kappa, that is the pupillary center and the visual axis, just for the audience. And what my thought is, if you're looking at multifocal IOLs, because you look at the limbus, so alpha will be more relevant rather than kappa for IOLs.
Yes,
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Jagdish and Himanshu. Do stay on with us. There are more different topics where a lot of controversies are there.